1 Corinthians chapter 3. You're going to look at the entire chapter today. Some of us say only a chapter, and some of us say an entire chapter. Don't worry, we'll get done. So we had there was a study done by the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention, and they sent me a small portion, and they gave me, within a 2-mile radius of this church, every statistic you could ever imagine. Everything. Population, work, race, broken down by a single mom with how many kids and how old are those kids. And it's tons of numbers. And it's how the 2-mile radius around this church matches the national average on all of these things. How many retired people there are, how many young people there are. Everything. And I wanted to look at some things. It's Labor Day weekend. Everybody knows why we celebrate Labor Day. Why do we celebrate Labor Day? Okay, nobody knows why we celebrate Labor Day. What's the point of Labor Day? To work. To work. It's a day to get off of work, right? Used to, see, I'm going to take you guys back to a golden era. Used to, when you turned 12, you got a job. Look at you, you're like, no. Used to, you started working 15, 16, places would hire you. One of the girls this morning, I was laughing. I said, you work yet? No, I'm not 16. I said, I was 15 when I started working. Where did they hire you? I said, Brahms. I was working at Brahms. I was scooping ice cream. She's like, I don't work at Brahms. I didn't want to work at Brahms. But you started working, and you worked all the time. You just went to work. You got up every day, and you went. There was no like, hey, I think I'll call in sick and not do this today. You were supporting a family. Some of those kids at 15 were helping to support the family, helping to offset things. So you went to work. So the national government said, hey, here's a day. Everything shuts down. You have a day to spend with your families. Now, how many of you have to work Monday? How many of you have to work tomorrow? 1, 2, that's it? Yeah, you got the wrong job. So most everybody still celebrates it. But here's some of the statistics. I wanted to focus in, being Labor Day, I wanted to focus in on jobs surrounding us. And this is taken from a little bit wider pool than that 2 miles. But I wanted to give you an example. In the pool taken, 151,000 people are working. So it's a little bit bigger than 2 miles. But in the pool taken, 151,000 people were working. That's great. 62% of those jobs were white-collar jobs. They were the boss, or they were able to make their own hours. 38% of those were blue-collar. They were the workers. 94,000 people in that same pooled area are not in the workforce. Now, not in the workforce means you could be retired, you could be too ill to work, on disability, you could be going to school. There's lots of reasons why. But here's the kicker. Out of 151,000 working, 94,000 not working, about 8,000 were unemployed. That's a 4.9% unemployment rate. The national average is right at that 4.9. What's the purpose? Think about this just for a second. What's the purpose of having a job? And you don't have to shout that out loud. Just think about it to yourself. What's the purpose of working? Right? Some of us say to buy things, to afford things, to provide for our families. I read an interesting thing the other day, a little quote. It says, we don't buy our material possessions with money, we buy them with our time. And I thought that's very true. It takes money to buy everything, but what does it take to give money? My time. If I'm going to make money, that's time I'm not going to spend with my family. That's time I'm not going to spend in recreation. That's time I'm not going to be able to spend in my hobbies, unless you just have one of those amazing jobs like pastoring where your hobby just happens to be your job. and your family just kind of does it with you most of the time. So what's the point of working? The point of working is the more you work, the more money you make, the better the house, the better the cars, the better the dream, right? The hustle. Make money to have better stuff, right? Nobody ever says, I want to get a really good job and make a whole bunch of cash so that I can give it all away. That's very rare in the American dream, in the American society. I want to make $7.3 million a year so that I can give the $7 million away and keep the 0.3. Right, that's the look you get. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Who would think that? Let's read. 1 Corinthians chapter 3. He says, And I, brethren, could not speak to you as spiritual men, but as men of flesh and as infants in Christ. I gave you milk to drink, not solid food, for you were not yet able to receive it. Indeed, even now you are not able, for you're still fleshly. Since there is jealousy and strife among you, are you not fleshly? And are you not walking like mere men? For when one says, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos, are you not mere men? What then is Apollos, and what is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, even as the Lord gave opportunity to each one. I planted, and Apollos watered, but God caused the growth. So then neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but God is the one who causes the growth. Now he who plants and he who waters are one, but each will receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are God's fellow workers, and you are God's field, God's building. So what you need to know about Corinth at this time, you had different pastors who had come in. You had Paul, you had Apollos, you had different guys. Timothy, Barnabas, different people. And people were saying, I'm a follower of this guy. I prefer this guy. Some people said, I prefer this guy. I like to follow him. Everybody has their TV preachers that they like to watch. Some of you watch Joel Osteen. If you do, stop it. But if you're watching Joel, some of you are going to say, I follow Joel. I get his Facebook updates. It helps me when I'm having a bad day. Some of you say, well, I follow John MacArthur. Some of you say, well, I follow John Piper. Some of you say, well, I follow Francis Chan. Some of you say, I've never heard of any of these people. Dig a little deeper. Some of you say, I follow Charles Stanley. I like people who sit. We all follow different people. But does that mean that one man's word is not true while another man's word is true? Paul is speaking here and he says, look, you say that you're following me, and some of you say that you're following Apollos, and what you're really doing is you're putting a dividing line right down the middle of the church. To make this a little more at home, and I know I'm not supposed to bring this name up, this half of the church loves Matt Walker. This half of the church really wishes Jerry Fulton would come back. That stings a little. But that's where we're at. You have churches every day that shut down because a pastor leaves and the next pastor comes in. Well, you're not who we want. And they get divided. Don't follow Fulton. Don't follow me. Don't follow any other pastor. Follow Christ. The words of Paul. You follow Christ. And in following Christ, when we're all after the same goal, guess what? That's why I can go to lunch with Fulton and we're great. That's why pastors can work together. It was an interesting dynamic at Tabernacle. And if they're watching, it was interesting because a really good friend of mine, Ryan Gilbert, was the youth pastor, and he stepped up to the executive pastor position, and they brought in a new youth pastor. And I thought, how does that work? Because if this guy is the youth pastor and oversees the spiritual relationship for all of these kids, and then he gets bumped up to an associate pastor role and we bring in a new youth pastor, those kids don't go to the new guy right off the bat. They tend to go to him. But when you sit down and you explain, this is not about us, this is not about me, this is about Christ, it works when everybody's on that page. And that's Paul's plea with the Corinthians. Be after Christ. Don't chase me, because I'm going to fail you. I'm going to let you down. Don't chase any other man. They're going to fail you. Christ. Follow Christ. All I did was sowed. I planted, and Apollos watered, but God caused the growth. So then neither the one who plants or the one who waters is anything. Paul says, I'm nothing. I'm nothing. The reason I gave you guys those statistics on white collar and blue collar, think about this. Paul puts himself in that position, the man who plants or the man who waters. Do you want to be the man who plants or the man who waters? We've been talking about discipleship, and I thought about discipleship inside of that. You know, I remember being really young, probably my daughter's age, and going out to Palestine, and my granddad would get on the tractor, and he would row out the dirt. And I remember going and pushing seeds in the ground. Now, whether I'm making this up or it really happened, I may be making it up, but I remember that. And I remember getting told, not too close together. You got to space them apart, not too far down, just barely push them. Anybody that's ever planted a seed, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever planted with Mama and Daddy, right? We have a little garden, and my kids were like, hey, can we plant these seeds? And you're like, sure. And you make a little hole, and they go, and dump all the seeds in that one. And you're like, no! And then when it starts growing, like all the vegetables are all mangled up on each other. You got to space them out. You got to put them some of them you got to put 2 inches down. Some of them are an inch down. There's different ways. The planter is the manager. The planter is the one who comes out and sets things according to how they need to be done. Right? The planter is the person who comes up and makes very broad fields. Right? It's easy for me to be the planter. Right now I'm going to plant into you. I'm going to sow into you. And it's a very broad field. The one that waters, that's the blue-collar job. That's work. That's work. We have a little planter box out here. Miss Joan was taking care of it. And I was talking with David Duke across the street. And David says, I see y'all's plants are kind of dying. And I said, well, it's kind of hard to get water out there because we leave the water hose and people tend to run off with the water hoses and different things. And David goes, I tell you what, put you some nice plants in there, and as long as I'm here, they won't die. So without you guys knowing, so if you see David outside, run over and give him a hug, because every day he goes out and he waters his yard and he drags his 100-foot hose to the middle of the street and does this. He does. And he waters our plants for us. And now you see them, you go out to that planter box and it's green and it's overflowing, right? And He's watering for us. He's doing an everyday task because none of us had the time or the resources to do it. And He said, this is what I got to do. I'm out here watering anyway. I might as well water yours. Discipleship, we've been talking about that. If I'm planting, now we're talking about somebody has to come behind and somebody has to invest that time, and you have to water. It's easy to stand on stage like Billy Graham in front of 20,000 people and say, everybody that needs Jesus, come on down. And you have thousands of people come down. And thousands of people accept Christ that night. And you're like, yeah, glory. The question is, when they leave that place, are they being discipled? Are they joining churches? When they left those crusades, are they getting plugged into the Word? Or are they, yeah, I joined that, yeah, I got saved. And then they go home and it's like, oh, what do I do now? So the one that waters, while the one that plants has to have all of these ideas and has to have all of these things laid out, the ones who water are actually the workers. They're actually the ones putting foot to ground. And you may not even see them. You may not see them. They may come through when nobody's there and they're watering. But you know what? Because of that, God is causing growth. And if you invest in people's lives, the way we've invested in those plants out there, you'll see a beautiful planter box overflowing. According to the grace, verse 10, according to the grace of God which was given to me, like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation, and another is building on it. But each man must first be careful how he builds on it. For no man can lay a foundation other than the one which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Paul says, look, I came and I laid this foundation of Christ. I told you exactly what you needed to know about Christ so that everything that's built on top of this is a good house, right? The house we used to live in, the foundation was not exactly the best. And when I say not the best, like there were cracks I could probably put my hand through. And the house had shifted, and I called a buddy of mine who does home repair. And I was like, hey man, I need to know what we can do about this. Like, we got to get this foundation worked on. And he walks over and he walks around the house and he comes to me and I was like, what's your opinion, man? What can I do? He's like, you need to move. And I'm like, well, thanks. And he's like, yeah, you need to. He's like, we can cosmetic this. And he goes, but it's crumbling. Like, it literally needs to be picked up and repoured. And I'm like, ugh. So the next week we put a house on the market. But we were honest. But that's the foundation of Christ. When you have a solid foundation, the house that sits on it is not going to crack. It's not going to fall. But if you live in Ennis or the surrounding areas, you know a swampy foundation, what happens? Yeah, you start seeing little cracks, right? Just little ones coming out from the door. And you're like, oh, that's not good.
Come to my house, I'm sure.
Yeah. You start looking and you're like, oh, that's not good. Then you get the real awesome ones that go across the roof and you're like, oh, that's really not good. And then before too long, you can see into the next bedroom and you're like, man, we got to do something about this. The house, you kind of push on the house and the whole thing does like this and you're like, uh-oh. The foundation is the surety that everything else is built on. Now look at what he says. For no man can lay a foundation other than the one which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now if any man builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each man's work will become evident, for the day will be shown. For the day will show it, because it is to be revealed with fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. Notice what Paul puts in there. He says there's gold, there's silver, and there's precious stones, there's wood, there's hay, there's straw. If you're going to build a house, see, I read books to little kids, or at least I used to. There's a story about these 3 pigs. If you're going to build a house, what are you going to build a house out of? Bricks, something strong, right? I'm going to lay a house of gold. Right? I'm going to build my house out of gold. Imagine telling a contractor that. When the contractor's like, we've laid the foundation, what do you want to build with? And you look at him and say, well, I've saved up some money. I want to build this house out of pure gold. Like I'm going to have it poured and laid and it's just going to be one solid gold structure. They'd be like, you're out of your mind. Silver, precious stones. I'm going to make it out of gems and rubies and all that, so when people drive by, they're blinded. Or imagine the look on his face when he lays this beautiful, perfect foundation. Well, what are you going to build on this? 30,000 square foot, beautiful slab foundation. And you say, I got a bunch of straw. I'm going to build this house out of straw. Like I spent all my money. I did all my work in the foundation. So all I got left is some twigs. I'll build a house out of twigs. Here's the issue. Paul is saying, he says, I came in and we laid the foundation of Jesus Christ. Right? Here we are. Woo! The foundation of Christ. The perfect foundation. It's flawless. Able to withstand whatever movement, whatever shaking, whatever comes against it. And yet some of us build our houses out of twigs. Some of us, we build on top of it, and we're building houses out of garbage. You see, Paul puts it in there and he says, you have stones, you have silver, and you have gold. Those things are costly. They take more time. They cost more money. It's a pain. It's a hurt. But it's going to be stronger. A wood frame house is not going to withstand what a brick house can withstand. But the brick house costs more up front. So it is with us in Christ. You have your foundation laid in Jesus Christ. If you don't go through the pains and if you don't go through the time of studying this Word, of prayer, of talking with other people, of building them up, what are you building your house out of? Right? Men, if churches are offering Bible studies and you're like, nah, football. Monday night football. That's great. Stay home. Watch football. I love you. But don't show up 10 years down the road and wonder why your life is in shambles when you've built a house out of sticks. It's ridiculous. I don't understand why my house can't withstand the storm, because you built it out of straw. And the first little wind that comes along, it knocks it down. But when you take your time and you build that house out of gold, out of something solid, out of something precious, yeah, it took a little bit of effort, but it's able to withstand. It's able to supersede. It's able to go past. The winds are going to come and you'll be just fine. Look at what he says. This is where it gets kind of scary. Each man's work will become evident, for the day will show it, because it is to be revealed with fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. If any man's work which is built on it remains, he will receive a reward. If any man's work is burned up, he will suffer loss. So This is what I want to tell you. If you're in this congregation and you say, I got saved back in 76, I got saved in 86, I got saved in 2016. No matter when you got saved, that's great. You've passed that judgment. Jesus Christ is going to look at you and He is going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the kingdom. And you're going to walk in. But now, everything that you've done goes through a judgment. Goes through to steal their name, a refiner's fire. God is going to light your entire life on fire. And every garbage that you've done for the sake of me, all the years that I put in building my bank account, building my house, building my cars, all that good stuff, that's all going to burn away. Because that means nothing to Christ. It's just going to burn up. But those precious things that you've done, those times in prayer, those times in study, those times sitting with people, listening to their stories, hurting when they're hurting, praying for them. Those times in worship, personal worship, congregational worship, all of those times, all of those things, those will be like stones. Those will be like precious stones. If any man's work which is built on it, he will receive a reward. If any man's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, as through fire. Some of the other translations read, as if just barely through the flames. I've made this comment before. That's not how I want to get to heaven. I don't want to get to heaven and God take my entire life and push it up in front of me and light it on fire and there's nothing left. And He's like, go. And you go into heaven? Yeah. But I made it. That's all I really cared about anyway. I made it to heaven. Right? Do you not know that you are a temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? If any man destroys the temple of God, God will destroy him. For the temple of God is holy, and that is what you are. You can misinterpret that verse really, really easily. The you here is plural. So when you read this, please interpret this as a plural you. It's all of you. We are the temple of God. You are the temple of God. You are where God dwells. If you are saved, if you have received Christ as your Savior, you are the temple of God. And don't you know, if any man destroys the temple of God, God will destroy him. I've heard this be used for suicide. I've heard this be used for everything. Listen, when you read the Bible, take it in context. Paul has been talking about Apollos. He's been talking about Paul. He's talking about people causing divisions. And he's writing to people and he's going, you are the temple. All of us are the temple. And if you're going around and you're whispering and you're back talking about people, you're tearing down the temple. You're literally one, and imagine it this way. You're literally one that while the Jewish slaves had the rocks on their backs and they're carrying to make the temple, you're literally grabbing them off and walking them the other way. You're tearing everything down. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you thinks he is wise in this age, he must become a fool, so that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness before God. For it's written, He is the one that catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the reasonings of the wise, and they are useless. So let no one boast in men, for all things belong to you. Whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas, or the world or life or death, or things present or things to come, all things belong to you. And you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. I was thinking about this in terms of work. And I've been thinking about everybody's favorite job. Football. Right? Football season starts. That's Labor Day. Tomorrow I'm off of work. I'm going to grill. I'm going to go watch the game. It's going to be a good day. Right? Think about a football team. And I'm glad somebody isn't here because I'm going to pick on them a little bit. And I was kind of worried that they would show up. I had a buddy in high school, was on the football team. Then he left the football team because it was too hard. It's too much work. So he quit. Right? I didn't sign up for these 2-a-days. I didn't know nothing about this. I'm out. So he quits. Well, then Ennis gets really good. We may get in the playoffs. There's a chance we're going to go to state and get the ring. Now, all of a sudden, hey, coach, I'd like to join the team back. And Coach Sam Harrell looked at him and he said, "It's not my call." "What do you mean? You're the coach." "I want you to go to the team and I want you to ask every guy in that locker room, and if they'll let you back on, I'll put you back on. But if they have a problem with it, you're not getting back on." So he went to the team. He's a great guy, so they let him back on. He got his ring. He missed out on quite a bit of the work, but he still got his ring. Right? There are professional players who ride the bench, right? And I've made this kind of, listen, I'm not knocking them at all. If you could pay me $100,000 a year to sit on a plastic bench and us win the Super Bowl, I'm all for it. I will be your third string kicker and I'll never touch a ball. And I'm perfectly fine with that. Just put me in a uniform and sit me out there. Hope they don't call my name because I am tiny, tiny. But I get the ring, right? The trainers, all these people, all the support staff, everybody. You win the Super Bowl, everybody gets the ring. Now think about that. You go to dinner one night and the waitress goes, "You're a Super Bowl champion?" "Oh, yeah. What team did you play for?" Not the Cowboys, because we ain't won in a while. New England Patriots. "You played for the Patriots? Did y'all deflate those football?" "No." "You played for the Patriots?" Yeah. "Do you know Tom Brady?" "Oh, man, Tom, yeah, that's my buddy." "Really? What position did you play?" "Oh, I was kicker." "Really? You're the kicker for the Patriots?" "Yeah." "Third string?" "How many points did you make?" "None." "So you didn't make any points?" "No." "How many games did you play?" "None." "Wait, so you never played, but you got a ring?" "Yeah, they give everybody one." "So what did you do?" Showed up. Showed up, suited up, stood there, looked good. You seen me on TV a couple of times when they passed the camera. But you didn't do anything. Not really. Just made the team. Listen, we can laugh, and a bunch of you already know where this is going. I can tell it by your face. There are tons of people sitting in church pews who just made the team. You just made the team. And you're going to get to heaven. Man, what did you do for Christ? Nothing. How many points did you score? None. What position did you play? I didn't. I was just support staff. I suited up. I showed up every Sunday and I looked good. I got the ring. I got the championship. I got the end goal. But here's what you're missing. Those guys, those of you that watch sports, those are the guys during the championship that are running around looking for somebody to hug. You see those guys? The third string kicker, the confetti's going and the third string kicker's like, "Yeah!" And he's running around, he's like, "Somebody hug me! Somebody high five me!" And the rest of the team goes, "You didn't do anything! Get out of here!" And those that played every down, every snap, they're in a huddle and they're crying and they're bawling. And it means so much more to them because yes, they won the championship, but they overcame so much to get there. They overcame and they worked and they fought so hard to get there. And they're the ones laid out on their backs and they're just like, "I can't believe this moment. I cannot believe this moment." And there are those of us who have laid the foundation of Christ and we're diligently working. And I'm not saying that you're saved by works. Please don't misconstrue that. You're saved by grace through Jesus Christ. But once you're saved, it's time to get to work. And I'm not begging you to work in the church. You may look at me and say, "I got 9 things that I do outside of this church that are all missionary related." Excellent. Excellent. I'm not begging you to get involved in the church. I'm begging you to get involved with Christ. That's what I'm asking you to do. If you don't serve at all in this church, but you look at me and say, "I'm going to go serve people in flood relief in Louisiana," go. Go. "Hey, I'm going to have to miss Wednesday night because I mentor this kid and I'm going to take him out on Wednesday nights and we're just going to sit and have burgers and I'm going to share the gospel with him." Go. Go. But the problem is there's too many folks just sitting with the ring on their finger, just waiting for the championship. And the Bible literally tells you you'll get there, but you'll get there as one who just barely escaped the flame. You'll get to heaven and be like, "Somebody hug me! I made it! Somebody hug me!" Guys, the championship is going to mean so much more. Christ is going to mean so much more. When you have labored, when you have given up this life, and you have labored to get there. Those young girls in the gymnastics competition, right? You hear about those stories. And I'm like, why can't my daughter do that? And then you listen to Gabby Douglas talk, and she's like, I spent 17 hours every day in the gym my entire life. And I'm like, that's why my daughter can't do that. She's on the couch eating Ho-Hos. And she's like, I can do a cartwheel, one cartwheel. But these girls, they train their entire life. And as they're standing on that podium, and I heard one of the girls, she said, I didn't go to prom. I didn't go to homecoming. I didn't go to movies. I didn't do anything. She's like, I had a private tutor who came in. We worked from 7 a.m. to noon on school stuff. And then at noon, from noon on, I'm in the gym. Cartwheel, do it again. Cartwheel, do it again. Cartwheel, do it again. Do it again till it's perfect, till it's flawless, till you can stick it every single time. And you're going to tell me that this little 10-year-old girl at some point didn't go, forget this mess. I just want to be normal. But as she's standing on the podium and the national anthem's playing and she's holding that gold medal, it means so much more to her than it would have if somebody bought her that medal, participation trophy. Right? I earned this. I earned it. I worked hard on this. And it is an honor to have this. Guys, when we get to heaven, I'm going to look at Jesus and I'm going to say, you earned this. You earned this for me. But man, I worked hard for you. I tried every day. Every day. I did what I needed to do, got my affairs in order, and I hit the gym. I hit the book. I hit prayer. I went out and saw people. I tried to talk with people. And I tried. And I'm not perfect. There were times I said things I shouldn't have said. There are times I did things I shouldn't have done. I'm not perfect. But man, I put in some work for you. And I love you. And this right here in this moment, it's everything. Guys, Christ has laid the perfect foundation for us. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Now it's up to you what you build on top of it. It's up to you how much you want to sacrifice. Do I want to go brick? Do I want to go wood? Do I want to go hay? It's up to you what you want to sacrifice to build on that. You can build elaborate straw houses. They're still straw houses. All right? I love y'all. If there's anybody here who doesn't know Christ, let me tell you this. You've been hearing about working. You've been hearing about building up. You can't start to build up yet because you don't have the foundation. That would be like you showing up to your house plot and you just start framing it out. And the guys are like, wait, we didn't lay the foundation. You're like, we don't need no foundation. It'll be fine. You ever put a house on the floor with no foundation? I tell you what, I'll be honest with you. Go around back. There's a portable building out there. It's set on the floor pretty much. The foundation is kind of rotted out underneath it. Walk through it. It just topples. You cannot take a house and set it on the ground with no foundation. The wood's going to rot. Everything's going to eat up and it'll just fall apart. Guys, you can show up here and if you don't have Jesus Christ, you can play the church card for a good long while. Fake it till you make it, right? But one day that wood's going to rot through and your house is going to tumble apart. It's going to happen. Make sure you have the solid foundation. And it's simple. It's so simple. You know that you're a sinner. You know that you've done wrong. You ask Christ to forgive you. If you don't know what sin is, it's those things that go against what God loves. That's it. You've missed the mark. And we've all done it. I've done it. Do it constantly. I did it this morning. I missed it. But because of Christ, because of my assurance and my acceptance of Christ, He's covered me. And you come and you pray and you give your life to Christ, and then you can start to build, and then you can start to live for Him. You can't live for Christ without knowing Christ. You can't. You can try. If you don't know Jesus Christ as your Savior, come down. We can talk about that. We can work on that. If you'd like to make this church your church home, if you know Jesus Christ as your Savior and you say, man, I'm looking for a house, I'm looking for a home, we're here for you. Come on down. We'd love to have you. Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for hearing the gospel. Thank you for hearing this little bit. And I pray that you get into the Word, get into prayer, get into so much more, and learn to build your house as a skilled builder.